So when it comes to sexual objectification, I think that a lot of us just don't have any clue what that means. So I think it would be really important for us to just define that. And I think one of the easiest ways to do it is to take that big word, objectification, and just whittle it down a little bit. And we can think of it as just being an object, a sexual object. And I don't think anybody really just wants to be a sexual object, male or female. And so I'd love for us to just open the conversation on where we see sexual objectification happening and how we can just steer and navigate the ship around and make sure that nobody's feeling like a sexual object.
When in competitions, when you want to go see your pictures, you can go see everyone's pictures. So I feel like we need to have something to where we can have like a code or like, you know, a certain number to just go look at a certain team. And if you don't have that number, you can't go look at everyone else's pictures.
We know, so the photographers we know are credited to take those pictures, but who else can get into our competitions and get that close to the stage as well, have the same angles that those photographers may have to take those pictures. And if a picture is taken as a whole, like when a team does a pyramid, that's an awesome moment for the whole team. But if a photographer or if someone else gets in the competition and takes that picture down and narrows it down to just one person, that's when some objectification may happen.
And I think that it's important that knowing as an athlete that it's not your fault that these photos are being taken by other people. You're in the middle of a routine, you're an athlete, you're moving around. Yes, you're in a crop top and yeah, you have a skirt and sometimes it rides up and you're jumping and moving. You can't really focus on what's happening with your body at that moment when you're focusing on your routine. So I think it's important to know that you are safe and you're not having predators all around taking pictures of your body and doing who knows what with them.
To me, there's a couple different sections of a cheer routine. And when you get to the dance section, that's kind of when it ramps up a little bit and the crowd gets louder. But as athletes, if we can remember going into that, okay, sassy, not sexy.
Yeah, and along the choreographer point of that too, your choreographers are trained, and if they're taught about this as well to make it sassy but not sexy, know that the motion they gave you is going to be good enough for your score sheet. You don't have to overdo it when you perform on stage. Just do the exact motion they gave you so you can keep yourself safe as well.
And then those aren't the only moments that everybody cheers for, right? Yes. I mean, imagine when a big pyramid structure hits, everybody goes crazy. Or when a turn section that was so long that everybody synchronized so perfectly lands. It's that was impressive.
Choreographers and coaches are trying to beat the score sheet. And when we think about it, do those sexy motions really gain points? No, it's the visuals, it's the creativity, it's the pictures that you're able to create. When I watch a routine, the routines that I remember are the ones that made me feel something and the ones that made me say, my eye go, wow, how did they just do that? And I think that if we come back to the visuals, which was ultimately what cheer and dance was formed on, how cool it is to see that many people all working together at the same time to create something bigger, that then we can start to move back in the direction of the art form that we've become.
I feel like the older girls should also understand too. They should know right from wrong or, sexy from sassy as well. So versus, some younger kids, a choreographer could say, hey, do this motion. And they honestly don't know versus someone our age. And we know that's wrong. We know it might be a little too much, You also have to speak up and say, hey, I think this is a little too much. Can we tone it down or can we find an appropriate motion?
I'm just now listening to y'all learning there is a difference between sexy and sassy, and if me as 16-year-old is just learning this, imagine all these little girls who have no idea that there's a difference, and as athletes we can teach them the difference, and I mean just know when you're really crossing that line between sexy and sassy.
You can't always change what your coach tells you to wear. So if we can do what we can do as role models and say, okay, well, if I'm performing this way and younger kids see it, you want to make sure that they're seeing something that's appropriate. Or use your words and express, this is why I'm doing this.
So we should be proud to focus on the athletic side, even though that maybe that's not what the image is right now because it is being objectified to the sexual side of it. We should be proud to make the change and focus on the athletic side of our sport.
Yeah, we're not saying don't shimmy, don't do certain motions. We're just saying, there's always an appropriate way to do that motion that you would like your kids to do.
But I think it's important that we are having that consciousness about what that means, like who might be watching, who might be looking at you in a certain way, not looking, oh, this person is fit and
looking at a certain part of your body besides you as a whole.
And I feel like that's our job as an athlete, not to we need to know when too much is too much because, we want to be seen as athletes in this all-star industry. We don't want to be seen as just a sexy image, we're more than our bodies. And I feel like that's something that we can really speak on. And
I think that it's really through the choreography and the uniforms that we're talking about. And, it's almost like athletes can encourage more athleticism through the sport and through their photos and everything. Because while we don't always get a choice as to what our uniforms are or what our choreography becomes, as was said, we can encourage more of a change in direction so that we're focused more on a different aspect.
It's almost like bringing it back to what the foundation is, which in fact is the human body performing these visual pictures through our athletic skills. Yeah. But from something that I actually had my eyes open to today when we were learning more about sexual objectification is that the statistics are there for men too. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how can we protect the guys within our sport that are being asked to do things that maybe they are excited about doing, but might attract some objectification?
Yeah, both, Drake and Jaden pointed out that they were trying to be almost like older brothers to the girls. They were trying to protect them, but guys don't really have somebody protecting them. It's the girls are being looked out for, but the guys aren't. So maybe there's some way that the guys can help each other, or even a girl could try to step in and help.
I think one of the main questions for us too is why are there sexualized choreographed movements in this industry to begin with? It's a youth sport, is it not?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, get confused, and also that this is a youth sport as well. So if a little girl will go on stage and she's doing sexual motions and everyone's cheering her on, yes, you're working it, you're killing it, she's gonna think, oh, that's okay to do. And then so the next child is gonna think, oh, since she did it, she's getting rewarded by the crowd. Why can't I do it? Why am I not doing those motions? And then she's probably gonna go home, practice, and then come back to practice and say, oh, look, I got these motions, da-da-da-da. And then the coaches put them in, and then they totally forget that these are kids. And, there are people out there looking at them not as kids when they do those motions.
I think that there's a little bit of almost like a straight across of the board type of thing, because obviously we do have athletes that are open age level, that are older, that maybe are able to perform a little bit more age appropriate choreography. But then a tiny dancer sees that, or a tiny cheerleader or whatever, tiny athlete sees that and then wants to do the same thing. I think that there needs to be almost maybe education amongst athletes and maybe talk more of an open conversation of age appropriateness. You should be able to perform things that are age appropriate for you, but I think opening the conversation of, this is how old you are, this is the team you're on, that we want to make sure that it's appropriate for you right now. Something that's appropriate for me now wasn't appropriate for me 10 years ago.
Yeah, and looking at that, knowing that we do have, as older senior athletes, knowing that those younger athletes are watching us and they want to do the motions we're doing, but those motions are only age appropriate for us, the age appropriate motions need to go all across the board. But since they are looking up to us for that, we can also talk to them and they may understand it a little better from an athlete to an athlete. Mm-hmm. But for them right now, they have to have their age appropriate motions to keep them safe.
Almost seeing it as skill development, the same way that you would, learn a tumbling skill or learn a pirouette, that, there's steps that you need to do. You need to do this, you need to do this skill before you can progress to this. If we can have the conversation with fellow athletes, with maybe your cheer buddy or your dance buddy that's a couple levels lower than you or younger than you, that you can have that conversation of, this is a process, and you're gonna get there, but we have to start here first. And seeing it as, this is what's safe as a skill, but also what's safe for you as a person.
Well, and that brings us back to the human element. It's like, as humans, we do want to be attractive. We do, as humans, mate. And so it's like there is that sexual aspect to the body. But is that the end goal? Is the progressions leading to just being sexualized object? Right? Exactly, no.
I mean, that's not where, I think that age appropriateness is important, but that's not the end goal.
Right.
You want to be age appropriate, but you still don't want to cross that line. I really just go back to sassy and sexy. When you're competing on an open level team, you can be sassy. Yeah. When you're competing with a senior team and you're with 17 and 18-year-olds, you can be sassy, but you don't want to cross that line. And I think having that clear goal with coaches and choreographers and with athletes, and understanding this is the line we don't want to cross, but this is where we want to be, I think is important.
And I think it's important to note too, you can be confident in your body and should be without it being sexualized.
Yes.
Because you feel that surge of confidence when you take the floor and you're about to
Yes.
shut it down, right?
Yeah. So show that confidence. Show how well you do in those motions. Be sassy with it, but it doesn't have to be over-sexualized.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think also when we think about our roles as like everybody I've been hearing saying is like reaching and putting that hand down to the younger athlete behind you from where you came from. When we think about it, a lot of us became junior coaches along the way and are now in a coaching role. We're responsible for the safety of our minis and our tinies and our youth teams that we're now junior coaching. Mm-hmm. And it's not only just to be keeping them safe, but also to remember to keep ourselves safe. Yeah. And we hear about it. All-Star is all about teaching life lessons. And it doesn't have to be about just teaching people to be sexual.
And I think that's where like coach and owner or program and parent involvement in education can come in as well, because they have had much more experience. Just as the alumni have had more experience than us athletes, they can teach us and lead us as well.
I love it. It sounds like there's like so much more wanting of a conversation, like just opening that door of communication between us. And I think doing something like this together is the first step.